Hello and welcome to the Football's Football Show with myself, Tam McManus. Joining me today, Alan Ruff, and a special guest, Ian Murray, ex-teammate of mine at Hibs. Firstly, you're looking fit and well. Ian, you've been out at games, out at the Livingston game last night. Obviously looking to try and get back in somewheres in management.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, just been going to games. I went to Livingston last night, mainly been taken in championship games and a few at Easter Road, so yeah, just getting out and about.
Firstly, we'll speak a wee bit about Dunfermline. Obviously you were at Wraith Rovers and Neil Lennon just went in at Dunfermline. You were the scourge of Dunfermline. Some great results against them for Wraith, but were you surprised firstly that Neil Lennon's went in there, and secondly, do you think you can keep them in division?
Yeah, I think you'll always be surprised. Really good appointment on paper, because when you look at Neil's CV and the calibre of clubs that he's managed in his career, it's a real big signing for Dunfermline. I think Dunfermline can stay in the championship. Will they? That's a different matter.
Do you think they've got the personnel to do it?
Yeah, I think they do. But then I look at other teams in and around that area, Hamilton's of the world, Queen's Park. On their day, they've got the personnel as well. So it's going to probably come down to the games against each other in the end.
Right, we'll start at the beginning.
Well, I was going to ask Ian, obviously people look at when managers leave clubs, they think the reason is that the results is obviously driven by results, but I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the last two clubs you've been at, there's been so much going on behind the scenes, with new owners and new boards and all that, and people don't realise that can affect a manager as well as anything else.
Yeah, I think I've been in sort of two different situations. When I went to Airdrie, it was the new owners that went in there maybe a couple of months beforehand, and then I went in, so it was a wee bit different. And then at Wraith, obviously the new board came in. It was still made up some of the old board as well. It kind of came together. There was a lot of change in the second season, but it needed to be changed because the club was struggling when I went in. There's no two ways about that. It needed a bit of TLC in and around the stadium, changing rooms, working environment for the players and stuff. Budget-wise, it didn't change that much, to be honest. It went up a little bit, but it wasn't pots of money. We had to be pretty shrewd with what we were doing. But there was a fairly high turnover of players over the two seasons. And then, obviously, they decided to go a different way.
Difficult sometimes, when you look at, clubs who make a decision like that and you're scratching your head going, why? How did that happen?
Well, I mean, listen, your record at Wraith was very, very good. I think obviously the title race between yourselves and Dundee United that season, and you look how well Dundee United are doing this season. It's not as if you were playing against a team that's come up and struggled. They're in the top 5 at the minute.
Yeah, we achieved quite a lot in a short space of time, which sometimes isn't a brilliant thing. But you ride the crest of a wave. You go to Dunfermline in the derby, first time in the history of the Fife derby, one team's beat the other right through. Your biggest win at East End Park since 1920 odd, I think it was. First ever final for them as well. Plus we got to the final the year before in a quarter-final of the Scottish Cup. So in that short space of time, we actually did achieve quite a lot. So when they come out and say results and performances don't meet expectations, what are you basing that on? Because I was at the game not long ago, Wraith Rovers versus Queen's Park, 4-0 to Queen's Park. And I sat there during the game at one point. And it's easy when you're 4-0 down, it's different, the atmosphere changes, but I thought, where are Wraith going now? What an opportunity they had to build something, with or without me, and they've not taken it.
Yeah, well, listen, I think you built a team that was very attacking. You'd signed some players that fitted into your system. You played through teams, and listen, I think we were all surprised. I think that was the first one to maybe message you and saying we did fall out with people, but there was no fallout. It was just purely results driven. There was never
a fallout. There was never any warning. There was never any meeting. There was never actually. I never even got a remit. What you must do this. You must be in this position. We want to do now. If you're leading something and you want to get the best out of someone, go and speak to them and say, this is what we're looking for, this is what we kind of want, and then you can work together and try and get there. And if it doesn't work after that, you hold your hands up and go, fair enough, I understand, not delivered, but I don't feel that was the case.
No, as I said, I think that people will be flabbergasted that not only you left Wraith Rovers, but you're not in a job, so hopefully you're back in soon, Ian. But we'll go back. Obviously, we played together at Hibs for 7 or 8 years. At the very beginning, you were obviously an S form for Dundee United, and then you're a massive Hibs supporter. To get that call that Hibs were wanting you signing, was that a great thrill for you?
It was. I mean, I was at Dundee United. I went to Dundee United when I was 15. Start of a new sort of it was in the west of Scotland actually, like a youth initiative league. So I took the sort of plunge, if you like, at that age, to leave my boys' club in Edinburgh and go and sign with Dundee United and signed an S form. And then I was doing all right. I was playing, Scotland schoolboys, all this sort of stuff, and it was getting to that crunch time where you leave school when you go full time. Now I was a homebird, at that time. I really didn't want to leave Edinburgh. So when Hibs called, it was a perfect call for me. So I had to go to Dundee United at that point because they'd offered me a full time as well to go and say to them, I'm not signing. And it was Jim McLean, who was the chairman at the time.
Were you on a 12-year S form?
No, but I remember sitting in his office. I was, he was a 16, maybe 17, and he just went through me. And I just sat there. When you look back, and it's quite funny, but he was an intimidating guy.
And who were the senior players there then when you went there to Dundee United?
Dundee United did Maurice Malpass was there, Dave Bowman was there. Robbie Winters he probably was a senior player. Trying to think who else there. David Hanna was there. They had a couple of young boys breaking through as well. Craig Easton was breaking through. Jim Patterson was breaking through. A really good youth team and a good youth setup at that time. But United were a decent side. They'd been relegated in one season, but came straight back up. So it's easy for saying, it's all cliche. I wouldn't have left Dundee United to go anywhere else apart from Hibs.
Yeah, and obviously you signed with Hibs, Donald Park, who we both know well.
Yeah.
We Parky brought you in, we came through the ranks together, and we've obviously been on the end of some tongue lashings after him, Donald Park. But just coming through, breaking into the Hibs team, you signed a year after me, so I'd made my debut in the championship winning season where Hibs won it by 30 odd points. We'd signed Russell Latapy and Frank Scrooge, which we'll go into in a minute. But you made your debut the following season in the SPL. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. It was ironically up at Tannadice, 0-0 thriller. I can't remember touching the ball very often.
Did you come on or did you start the game?
I started the game.
Fullback?
No, left mid of a diamond. I think we were playing a diamond.
Right.
Obviously, I went to Trinidad on the sort of January break. I think I played the last game and I came on at half time in the second game, and then I came back to Edinburgh. It was incredible. just to touch on Parky, I used to scare it. When I was moving to Hibs from Dundee United, I signed the S form. So Dundee United withheld my registration for the year that you guys won the league. And I went away in a tournament with Scotland, and I knew I'd had a good tournament. And then one night, back in the day with phones, Gordon Strachan phones, my mum and dad's at Coventry, who were in the Premier League at the time. Oh, come down, we've got a great report. Now, if you remember Donald, he was good friends with the chief scout of Coventry at the hotel, George Mackey. Right, so I went down at the weekend. We didn't have a youth game, and I went down, and I remember going in the Monday morning or Tuesday morning. And I was folding all the kit up. It was Parky's in the room, and there's no words. And he just turns to me after 2 or 3 minutes. He just goes, "How was it?" And my face has just fallen, and I've just went, "It's all right." I just started folding. I just left.
You wouldn't have known they're all pals.
I know.
Donald didn't.
Yeah, they're all friends.
Like George Stewart.
I had George United as well.
And Rhys Strachan, they're all pals. So.
Oh, it was horrible.
Because George Mackey and Donald Park owned the West End Hotel in Edinburgh at Haymarket, so that was for the Glasgow boys. Yeah. So when I signed a 2-year YTS with Hibs, so the first 2 seasons we stayed in this hotel, Monday to Friday, then went back to Glasgow. And you can imagine there was like 8 guys, young boys for Glasgow. Parky was honestly caught us drinking, sneaking lasses in, all the stuff of the day. And I'm surprised that somebody's actually went on and played for the first team. But Parky's a fantastic coach.
Brilliant. I think that youth team that we were in, even the boys that didn't, go to the sort of levels that they could have, owe Donald a lot. He took to Scotland under 16s as well. He had a brilliant way of coaching, different to a lot of coaches. As a person, he kind of drilled standards into you as well, in his way. Which the biggest accolade I can pay him is, without Donald, I'm not sure a few of us would have went to the first team.
No, absolutely. I can remember playing in the BP Youth Cup game at Easter Road, and obviously first team were all there. Alec McLeish was there, and me and you and maybe Mark Dempsey had been in about the first team at this point. I'm not saying we were Billy big time, but we were like, we're playing under 18s because we've been in the first team. So anyway, we beat Kilmarnock 3-1. I scored a couple of goals, but I had a stinker. I was poor. So I'd come in after the game into the dressing room, and I was happy, loud and happy as Larry scored a couple of goals and all that. And Donald Park came in. For my 17 years career, I've never had a bigger rollick in this my life. He sat me down, he called me Billy big time. He said, you play like that again, you're going to be out the door. And I just scored 2 goals and won the game, and that was what Ian's talking about, standards.
It's interesting listening to the two of you talking about him, because he played with us at Partick Thistle, and he was totally different. He was really quiet. He's a quiet wee guy who went about his business. I'm trying to imagine him as this ferocious,
He was ferocious
wee guy.
I actually bump into him now and again still now.
I bumped into him in Edinburgh, but bumped into him. I told you a couple of weeks ago. Bumped into him. He's no changed. He's got a wee moustache and a wee bubbling about. No, it's so. The thing, obviously, I do appreciate what you're saying. Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Oh, bundles of it. Just bubbling out of him.
And we're talking about obviously breaking through at Hibs. Let's go into a couple of players that we both played with. We'll start off Russell Latapy. Now, I don't remember I don't know if you played in the trial game at Brecon when he played.
No, I didn't.
So, I'll start with Russell and I'll go into Frank Sosie. So Russell Latapy, nobody had heard of. But he was playing with Porto, he'd been capped to Trinidad. So we had a under-21 reserve game at Brecon for Hibs against Dundee United, I think it was. And we went up there and Russell was on trial. So nobody knew him. We turned up with the hampers, we were carrying the stuff. And there's this wee black guy just sitting outside the dressing room smoking a fag. So we had no idea who it was, right? So 2 minutes later in the dressing room, he's sitting down, and it was Parky and Malky Thompson coming in and went, and guys, this is Russell. Russell's in trial. Make sure you go and say hello to him and all that. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm not joking, it was freezing, right? It was pissing the rain, mud heap of a park. Russell comes out with gloves, and I'll never forget it. Comes out with gloves and all that on, and we were just going, this wee guy's for Trinidad, he's not going to fancy Brecon. And honestly, ball came up in the air, trapped it, took 2 players on, pinged it wide. McLeish was at the game. Aye. Half time, took him off, signed him didn't even let him leave the stadium. Signed him, was there with his agent, signed him that night. So that was Russell, and obviously you played with Russell as well, a genius.
Oh, brilliant. It's natural ability, really. Like you say, you played so carefree to an extent, maybe a wee bit unfair, because you obviously knew football inside out, movements and how to find bits of space. But as ability-wise, he wasn't rapid, quick, but he would take players on, get past them, just by moving the ball, moving his feet a little bit. But brilliant player, great teammate as well. Not one of those guys who would hang you out to dry. He had plenty of time for the young players.
Liked a night out.
I loved a night out.
Liked a night out. He was one of the roughie.
Did you not go over there? Did you not go?
So we went to. Ian was talking about it earlier. So obviously, because Russell was a massive legend over there, we flew there in the winter break. Yeah. Remember? And
you remember the big band and the
band. We got off the plane in Trinidad, and there was like a band
because he was there.
Yeah. TV cameras,
TV crews, and all that, and they're filming him coming off, and there's fireworks going off. And we were like, we didn't realise how big he was in Trinidad.
Although we didn't see much of Russell in Trinidad, he just disappeared.
Aye, because we all stayed in digs, and Russell didn't. Russell just stayed. Don't know who he was staying with.
I don't know. He came for the games, and that was about it.
He came for the games, but that was a phenomenal trip. That just we'd no idea how big Russell Latapy was in Trinidad. And remember, he came out the last night. I think he was with Brian Lara, and the 2 of them were out when we were all out the last night. Alec McLeish said, going to the big John Dennis story. So McLeish said the last night, we went out and have a night out, have a great trip and all that. With a few games, we worked hard. So we went out, and Russell Latapy and Brian Lara were out. So Brian Lara was the West Indies cricketer at the time, massive name. But the Russell was bigger. People were going up with Russell, autographs, pictures and all that. So we had a goalkeeper, Ollie Getskalskin, an Icelandic goalkeeper. I don't know if you remember him. He was massive. Remember, he was about 6'5", massive. And a centre-half called Sean Dennis, who was nuts, mental.
Big as well, though. Big lad. 2
of them are big. So anyway, at the end of the night, we're all pissed. And there's a bit of a kerfuffle. And, I'll never forget the noise. We were only 18 when we were young.
I remember it was behind me, and I never forget the noise.
All you heard was, right? And we turned round, and it was like Rocky. It was like, remember Evan Drago going down like that? Like a tree trunk, bang, hit the ground, hit the concrete. Aye. And I honestly, to this day, I thought he was dead. Right? I thought he was dead. Right? He wasn't moving. And so anyway, broke his jaw, broke his cheekbone last night. I'm trying to flew him. I think he had to stay in hospital earlier. So I'll never forget, we come back and we had a game the following Saturday, and the press had asked Alec McLeish, great trip away, Alex, any injury issues? And, Alex said, I think Ollie Getskalskin's going to be missing for 3 or 4 weeks. He's done his groin earlier. He was drinking at a straw for about 3 weeks. Sean Dennis wasn't a man to be messed with. But that.
We went to Trinidad and Tobago.
That's what we
Trinidad and Tobago. This was at like an over 50s thing, Vinnie Jones and
All right.
all them, and I took Macca, right? So it was just enjoy yourself, you know, and you played games against the local teams. And I was just when you said there, and I was sitting at the bar with Macca this night, you know, we're drinking cocktails, you know, the drinking all the different cocktails, and we're all sitting there. It was about 2 a.m, and Macca's at the bar, and this boy a hotel boy come running into the hotel, and he went, turtles on the beach. Turtles on the beach. Macca said, I'm not going to a nightclub at this time. No, it's turtles that's on the beach.
Aye, because Trinidad was rough as anything, wasn't it? Remember, Trinidad, but Tobago was beautiful. The island, we went out to the island and we're building a lot of houses out there.
Yeah.
And so the person that took us out to Tobago took us out, and they says, listen, this is...
Flew over there.
Flew over, it's like a seaplane or something like over in, and I'll never forget the poverty in Trinidad. It was such a poor country, but that was Russell. Frank Sosey was the other one. Your recollections of Frank?
Yeah, again, brilliant player. Completely different from Russell, obviously. Different attributes, different personality, characteristics, all that stuff. Again, though, I always remember what a brilliant teammate for young players. Never, left you hanging out to dry. Never, put blame on you. Never. Nothing like that. Would always try to help you. And his range of passing and stuff was just ridiculous. I always remember Frank how cleanly he hit the ball, and it was probably the first time I'd seen it live. Thinking, how the heck does he do that? I remember Motherwell away one day. I think Frank missed a penalty. I think that was it.
He did miss it. Because I remember the game and I get knocked out for the penalty. Somebody smashed me. Anyway.
Frank said to me at half time, don't worry, next free kick, it's going top corner. Without a word of a lie, next free kick, top corner. And I'm like, oh, man, that's crazy. How did he do it? I
remember that penalty kick because Ruffy, he missed the penalty and I ran in. He was going to tap it in the rebound and I got in his road. So I was going to hit it in the two and Naney's hit it. Do you know, it was one of the ones we left to each other. And I think that was the only time he ever said any cross words to me.
And how did Hibs attract him?
I don't know how they got. I don't know.
Well, the story. This is. I don't know if you were in Ian. So.
Because you just come over winning a bit.
Willie Mackay. You don't remember Willie Mackay, the agent? Willie Mackay was his agent.
Oh, was
right?
Oh, that's
right. So I'd remembered Frank playing in the games against Rangers because I knew everything about everything, not football, and I watched every league and all that. And I remember in the old main stand at Easter Road, we were all polishing the boots. I don't know if you were in there. I don't know if you remember coming in a year later. So we're all polishing the boots, and Willie Mackay and McLeish and Frank Sosey walked by. Frank, the big long coat on. And I turned to one of the boys, I says, that's that guy Frank Sosey that plays with Marseille. And they're going, no, it's no. So we get into it's him, right? So it's him. So he's in, he must have been at 32, maybe 33, something like that. He was early 30s. So we go into the dressing room and Alec McLeish puts two teams up on the board, 11 aside on the park. So in one of the teams was me and Kenny Miller. So me and Kenny Miller were rapid, we were quick, right? And another team was Frank, was playing at the back for the other team. So I think Alec McLeish had in his head, right, he's obviously a top player. I want to see if he's still got legs. We'll put two young boys up against him. So I remember watching Frank to warm up and I'm thinking, he's stiff, man.
He always looked stiff.
He just looks as if he couldn't run. and I think over 20, 30 metres, me or Kenny could have gave him a 20 or 30 metres straight run and beat him, right? And that game, I'll never forget it. Every time he ran in behind, I was a bit of headless chicken. Every time the ball got played was in the left back, I'd just run in behind for a ball in the line. I thought Frank's already just on in there. He read his a book, man. Kenny was the exact same. Kenny ran in behind. And I'll never forget, he couldn't get by on that. Do you ever see anybody outpacing him? Nah, I've never seen it in my whole life. He couldn't run.
He didn't need to.
Aye.
That was the thing. He just incredible.
He read the game.
Aye, reading of the game was excellent. People forget though, he actually played a trial game as well. He played against Middlesbrough, Easter Road, in a trial game. Don't know if that was just to check fitness or whatever it was. But again, I wouldn't say they made the team tick, but they were certainly huge for us. But we had other good players, but guys that were very underrated in that squad. Davi Zatelli was another player that came over, probably because of Frank, and he was technically brilliant. Some of the goals he scored, overhead kicks and volleys, are just...
Goal against AEK Athens at Easter Road.
Yeah. He scored overhead kick against Motherwell for Park as well. And maybe it was Dundee actually.
There's Dundee.
Just ridiculous stuff. Playing with these guys, how can you not get better playing with these guys? It's nearly impossible.
Yeah, and Mixu Paatelainen was another one. Mixu helped me, as a striker. I had my best season at Hibs under, I think under Alec McLeish, he always had a target man. It was firstly it was Mixu, then it was Craig Brewster who we played with. We both know
Brewster,
Craig Brewster really. He came through with Gary Connor, had a great spell with him.
I played in the first game that Mixu ever played
In Scotland.
in Scotland.
Who was it? Dundee United, Aberdeen.
Celtic Reserves versus Dundee United Reserves. I was playing for Celtic Reserves at the time. It was a midweek game with Dundee United, and he came onto the park and he was like a man mountain.
Massive.
Man, shooters and everything, you know, he was just absolutely huge, and he just bullied everybody in our team, you know, and you could see then, you know, where he was going to go in the future, obviously.
I remember training at Easter Road one day. It was the end of the season, we're on the pitch. I'll never forget it because it's the only time in my whole career I've probably been scared. I've caught him with an elbow by accident, complete by accident. He's went crazy. I'm only like young, 17, 18. And he's like in my face, I'm going to get you in the changing rooms. It was a port cabins, it must be the new stand getting built. I'm going to get you in the changing room. I could not concentrate for the rest of the session. But and then he came in and he just gave me a big cuddle. And I'm like, bloody hell, Mixu, man, you hugged me.
He was.
Me. I couldn't train. I couldn't because I thought he was going to kill me. I didn't even mean it.
He was quite a quiet big guy, but if you annoyed him, I remember we were on the night out in the Three Sisters pub. You remember Christmas night when he started punching the lights? You remember that? So we were all, Christmas night, we were all steaming, and it was near about Christmas, and there's lights coming down, and Mixu just started jabbing them, like the glass smashing all over the place, and we all got thrown out. But yeah, I mean, you look at the quality of the players at Hibs at that time. I made my debut the year before in the Championship, where, as I said, they won by a record amount, 30 points or something.
Lost the first game that season at Stranraer, by the way.
Lost the first game. Lost the first game, Alec.
Was that that season you got relegated and then you went into the lower division? When you started going on that winner running games and that, you're talking about 15,000, 16,000 in the games, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the crowd was there then, even although, you know, you were doing a lot.
I think as long as your team's winning, and when you're adding guys like Russell and Frank into the mix, and
Yogi was there.
Yogi, Stuart McGinley, all these sort of guys are coming. You know, it's when you're winning pretty well. It wasn't like the Hibs were scraping wins; they were winning pretty handsomely most of the time, and fans go over relegation pretty quickly as long as they start winning the next season, I think.
Obviously talk about Frank and Russell Latapy. You obviously made moves at Hibs at the time. You came through and you done really well. Alec McLeish left. Frank Sosey came in as the manager. Yeah. Now I'm forever indebted to Frank because he gave me a 5-year contract straight away. So I obviously didn't know his players. But Frank came in as a manager, and I can remember, I think maybe the first or second game I broke my leg up at Dundee with a couple of injuries to players that were playing. Lawson was struggling, John O'Neill, and it was saddening for me because I seen how much he loved the club. And did you play in a United game where he got sacked?
Unfortunately did.
And that was a final straw for Frank.
Mate, so I've always got a wee bit of...
What did you give away the penalty?
It was never a penalty, by the way. Semi-final game.
Semi-final
game, aye.
Eddie Annan scored.
Was it Eddie Annan scored the penalty? We were poor that night. Like you, Frank was... You know,
do you think he was ready to be a manager at that point?
I think in time. I think you've got to give somebody a bit of time. That's coming. You've got to remember the dynamics changed for Frank completely. He's went from the changing room literally to the office like that inside 24 hours because Alec's move came about pretty quickly. Maybe I always look back in that time and I think Alec McLeish was a brilliant manager. I'm indebted to Alex for the rest of my life and my career really. Alex probably knew it was time to get out. You know, we'd finished third, I think, the year before. We'd been a bit sloppy. I'll never forget his last game. I think it was Motherwell, and Alec was always on us. He was hard. He was hard on us. Any mistakes, and the ball went under my foot with about 2 minutes to go, and we're getting beat 1-0. He never said a word, and I look back and he was gone by that point. He left on the Monday. So he was, you know, and Frank came in, and like you, we saw Frank lose his job really, really early, and I think we all felt a bit guilty because he was such a brilliant player, but a brilliant teammate that I always feel we let him down a wee bit.
I do. I feel that the players really let him down. I think they were interesting. He said, I don't think he ever coached again after that. I don't think he ever coached again.
Frank for a long time.
He obviously never come back to Easter Road until I think Rod Petrie left. I don't think he ever forgave him. That was 15, 20 years. I think he never forgave him. And the club were always asking Frank to come back because he's a hero with the Hibs supporters. The Hibs supporters rate him as one of the best players that ever played with the club. And he obviously, I remember that night, Big Yogi was playing for United.
He was, yeah.
Can you remember what Frank Sosey wrote on the board at the end of the game?
No.
So I was in crutches and we'd just been beat 1-0 and Frank was getting the sack. So he's coming in and he wrote on the board, he says, "This is why we lost," and he wrote John Hugs, but he misspelt Hughes, right? And it shouldn't laugh, right? But I'm trying not to laugh because he's meant Yogi, but Yogi was brilliant that night. Yogi and Pat McGinley were playing for the area. They were desperate. They were desperate to get it up Hibs, you know. And I'll never forget him writing John Hugs. I think that was the last time I ever seen him. I think he sacked the next day. But Frank left. Bobby Wilkinson came in. Me personally, I liked Bobby as a manager.
Same.
I liked Bobby as a manager. He was fairly plain and simple with his instructions and his team talks. Sometimes too, maybe people would argue he could have done more. But did you like Bobby as a coach?
Brilliant. Yeah, I really did. I probably had my best form under Bobby, to be honest. Maybe I'm plain and simple because it worked for me. And then I just thought he comes over as this, or to the outsiders, this doer guy, anything but. Anything but. Brilliant guy. You're saying plain and simple there, but sometimes that's all you need. It's all you need. Took over Hibs at a really hard time as well. Wasn't a lot of money kicking about for Hibs. Had to blood a lot of young players in, which is very, very difficult. And obviously then he leaves. Went down to Plymouth. You know, he's again. For me, personally, I thought he was great to me. Great.
I was the same with Bobby. What I'll never forget, a couple of stories about Bobby. We went to Finland in pre-season. You remember going to Finland?
Yeah.
So we went to Finland in pre-season, and we get to the hotel, and it's a Radisson hotel, lovely hotel, and it's got a nightclub and a casino.
That's right.
Remember? Right. So Bobby and Jerry McCabe and wee Jim Clark are going mental, right? They didn't know anything about it, and they've got all these young boys, me and him, Gary O'Connor, Derek Riordan, Scott Brown, all these guys. Grant Brebner was there, was a rogue. So we're all like, we're never. So the first night we were there, Bobby said, anybody in here after 10 o'clock is getting fined a week's wages, right? And I remember I think it was Grant Brebner orchestrated it. He says, listen, see if everybody goes, it's not going to fine everybody, right? So the first night we're there, we're all in this casino. It's a nightclub, right? We're in the casino and having a few drinks, 11, 12 o'clock, and I got a tap on my shoulder. And it was Bobby.
That's what I remember.
I've never shit myself as much in my life. I went, Gaffer, he went, shut up. He says, get me a fucking whiskey and don't get me any shite because I know how much money you're on. So instead of fining a week's wages, they started drinking us, and that was the season. We went to Finland and we trained hard, but we were out all the time. When we come back, we get beat off Aberdeen the first game. Hearts beat us 5, Park de Vries scored.
Yeah,
5-1. I'm pretty sure we lost 4 or 5 of our first 6 games, and Bobby nearly got the bullet because none of us were fit. Pre-season.
We then went on a run though.
We got our legs about October and went on a run. But again, Bobby, I liked Bobby, and you're right about young players. That's a good point you make. I think he's underrated in terms of Hibs managers because he gave Derek Riordan, maybe Scott Brown, guys like that, Kevin Thompson. They all gave them all an opportunity. Listen, there's one that sticks out for me. The biggest disappointment in my career was the Livingston final, which
I was injured for that.
We'd obviously beat Celtic and Rangers and getting to the final.
It was an incredible path to the final for us. I was injured I didn't play any of those games. But as disappointing as it was, people forget Livingston were above us in the league. Livingston had a lot of money at the time, and they had good players.
Experienced players.
Really good
David
players.
Fernandez and guys like that.
We went into this final as favourites. For what reason? Because of our Hibs. That was the only reason.
And we beat Celtic Rangers probably.
Yeah, but you know, finals are different. Experience in finals is huge. You see it all the time, and Livingston had more experience. We played Livingston about a month later, beat them 7-0, 6-0 or something at Easter Road. But didn't really mean anything because we'd lost that final, and the Hibs fans were there, 45,000 packed out.
Yeah, that was roughly you've played with Hibs, you know the size of the club. I'll never forget getting to the stadium. Bobby had me on the bench, played Alan Reid with Rido. He was obviously going to bring me on later on with, I think me and Stephen Dobie was on the bench, but we came on at 2-0, then they just sat in. So, but I'll never remember a couple of minutes to go, just seeing the Hibs supporters just screaming it, just leaving, and it was it was packed. See, when we came out, I thought to myself, we need to score first today, because if we had a lot of young boys, Martin Brownie played, Kevin Thompson played, Witts, Deeks, Gaz.
Yeah, really young team.
Really young team, and I thought if we score first and get the fans behind us, we'll go and win the cup. Livingston scored first, and we didn't bottle it. I don't think we were ready. A lot of guys were ready.
That's what I'm saying about experience in these situations, build up to the game. day of the game, the most important part, we just looked like a young team. But that's what we were. You know, why would we not? Because you just mentioned all these names. Some guys went on to have amazing careers, but that was too early for us. It really, really was. And the fact it was against Livingston just made the whole thing worse.
It was.
It says a lot for all the young boys that sort of recovered for this. A lot of people
Absolutely.
wouldn't have recovered for something like that. You know, when you're thrown into a final, you're not expected to win it, but the young players that you've got there that are coming on, you know, later on in their careers, you know, and if something like that can set you back a long, long time. So he's done well.
I'm sure if you ask Scott Brown or Kevin Thompson, obviously went on and won stuff at Celtic and Rangers, and they would say that helped them that game. You know, they got to see what it was like to play in a cup final.
Absolutely.
And the experience it took from that to go in the next cup final, make sure you won in the losing team. I'm just going to go back to quickly on our cup final we lost. You played in it, the Scottish Cup final, under Alec McLeish. We were rooming together at Cameron House, so that was when Celtic won the treble, 2001 maybe.
Yes.
Martin O'Neill. So we played them in the final, and that was a week that Russell went AWOL. Russell Latipi went AWOL.
Jordan and York, that was him too.
So Russell was your top player at that time. So Celtic were favourites to win it, but it was a Monday, Tuesday. The final was on a Saturday. It was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off, Thursday, Friday, and it was just a normal week. Alec McLeish said, and Monday and Tuesday, no bother. Russell was there. Wednesday, day off. Thursday, he doesn't trap for training. And then the Thursday week, we got the paper. Mm-hmm. The Sun, front page of the Sun was him, Dwight York, Russell, Dwight York, and Jordan in a taxi. On the front page, gone in London.
Right.
So,
I think it was Edinburgh.
All right, I don't know. I can't remember where it was, but Russell never trapped for training, so they left Russell out, which I was delighted about because I thought I might have sneaked in the bench. So we were down at Cameron House. You started that game, didn't you?
Did I?
You started, and I ended up in the stand. There was 17 players. One player was getting left out. So Alec, I believe, that night in Cameron House went to everybody's room and told them who was playing, and told the subs who was a sub. And I was the only one that never got told. So,
well, do you know what? I remember it very well. Alec actually told me on the Thursday or the Tuesday, I can't remember, because it was in training, because I'd been playing right wing back because Archie had been injured. And he pulled me at training, and he went, just to let you know, I've messed you about all season, left back, centre mid, left mid, right wing back. He says, I'm going to mess you about again. And I'm going, I'm getting left out. Understandable, because you've got Stuart Lovell coming back. He went, I'm going to play your right wing back. I was like, wow, you know.
You never told me that. I was remembering that.
I was going to say that. I thought Alec McLeish was going to tell you on Tuesday you're going to be sharing with Tam McManus. He's not playing at all. So don't tell him.
It was really harsh because you scored down at
I scored against Stirling Albion.
Quarter final 3-2.
I scored in
last minute down at Killie 3-2, I think, as well.
I scored the winner in the fifth round in the quarter final, played in the semi.
So why did he just...
And we played Livingston in the semi.
Come on, I must have sitter. If I'd have scored that, he might have thought he's scored in every round and he put me on the bench.
I remember that, so I remember the bonuses for that were pretty high, by the way, back in the day, and we got Livingston and we were 2-0 up after about 10 minutes. And it was happy days.
I wish I was rubbing my hands.
Happy days.
But so McLeish, about 12 o'clock on the Saturday, Scottish Cup final, roasting day, Cameron House. The door goes, Tam, love you. So he goes along to the library and all that, and says, listen, you've been brilliant, son. He says, but I'm going to have a bit more experience, there'll be plenty of time for you to play in finals. And I just burst out greeting. And he's like, it's all right, son, don't worry about it, right? And I couldn't. I remember putting glasses on, remember the Burberry ties and all that. and boys would come up to me going, it's all right, son, don't worry about it. Just couldn't stop greeting, just all the way to the stadium. It's embarrassing. So anyway, we obviously lost the game 3-0. You played well that day. And we all went up to get the medals, but because I never got a medal. So I went back to Easter Road that night for a party. Win or lose, we were going back to Easter Road, and McLeish came up to me 10 o'clock at night or something. He says, listen, son, yeah, take that. And it was his medal. He says, there'll be plenty more medals for you, son. And he was spot on, because I got another fucking 4 runners up once.
Well, nothing, mate.
But McLeish gave me his medal, but I remember that was...
McLeish, I always felt Alec had a really good way of managing as well, because I remember...
Even when he dropped you thought...
I remember, there's 2 stories I remember. One is, we went in pre-season to France. I don't know if you...
That's right, I was there, Marseille.
Was it Marseille, was it? Went
Marseille.
there, and he pulls me, we went out last night, pulls me in the nightclub. He says, as always, what number do you want? It was like, I was 26 or something. He says, there's 18 or 6. And I says, being young, and 18, he went, no, 6. And I was like, right. And I said, oh, he went, you're a starter for me this season. And he was true to his word, he did start me, but I didn't start the season well, and he pulled me. Motherwell away, just after the sort of pre-match, and I'm going to leave you out. And I was gutted, like just devastated, because I just wanted to play it. Then he doesn't walk in, he goes, but come and see me Monday, we'll get a new contract sorted out for you. So you went from there to there, you know, like just the way he kept you going, and just thought the way that he treated us young players was hard, but he had that wee side to him where he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, he was a tremendous man, Madge. As I said, even if he pulled you. I remember we used to always hide. Big Yogi and I used to laugh over it. Remember, we used to go for pre-match. So when McLeish came out for pre-match and was looking about, everybody was like, remember? Everybody just like that, kid under reading the paper, putting a coupon or something, and he'd go, Tam, I'm word with you. And you knew you were on the plane. So I remember Yogi and all that used to laugh over it, says, oh, the gaffer's looking for you and all that. But as I said, even when he pulls you, and I've played with managers that would just read a team out and you were dropped. And I hated that. I hated that. I had it at Ayr United with Brian Reid, and he just took 2 minutes of his time and said, listen, I'm not playing you. You weren't great last week.
I could never get my head around whether it was better getting told the night before or the morning.
I don't know. I think
at least the night before you got...
Did you do that, Ian, with your management? Would you, if you felt somebody, maybe you were changing it tactically or a formation and you thought this boy maybe doesn't deserve to get dropped, would you go and say, listen, you're not playing, this is why?
Yeah, I think it depends on your group of players as well, and it depends on the individual. I don't think you have to do it all the time. I think deep down players know if they deserve to play or not, or they should. But sometimes you have to. I think out of respect to the player. Again, it could be tactical, and players don't believe you. When you say, oh, we're doing, they'll nod their head and they'll be away raging because they're thinking it's not tactical. Sometimes it's genuinely tactical. It really, really is. And I think as my careers went on in management, I think the days of trying to, talk crap to them is over. The players aren't thick. They can see through you. They'll be in that changing room talking about everything, training, lead up to games, team selection. But ultimately, every single footballer thinks they deserve to play. The only time that I can remember, again going back to Alec, at Rangers, we were playing Celtic at Parkhead on the Saturday or Sunday, and it looked like I was in the team on, say, the Tuesday, because we were doing a lot of 11v11, and he pulls me in the Thursday, he says, I'm going to play, I think, I can't remember who it was. I generally walked out that meeting, and I thought, he's made the correct decision there. I don't deserve to play. You're right. He's right, and I was fine because I thought, we're going to win. He explained it, and he didn't do it. He done it in a way where, he convinced me it was the correct decision.
And then, obviously we're talking about Bobby Wilson. Tony Mowbray came in. Now Bobby and Tony were chalk and cheese, really. I think when Tony came in, it was the first pre-season that I'd ever done. With the first day we had the balls out. I don't know if you remember, Ian, like under Bobby we'd go to Arthur's Seat and we just went down hills, and listen, that was what everyone done back then. But Tony came in and he reaped the benefits of Bobby, playing all the younger players, getting the experience and all that, and he picked up a real good crop of young players. And I'll never forget Tony coming in, and it was just, everything was ball work. It was running with the ball, but you still felt as if you were, because we did European games straight away, the Lithuanian team.
Yeah, that's right.
We get put out, but I think we were in about 5 to 6 days, I can't remember, but we weren't really fit and they put us out. But when Tony came in, it was all tactical. Everything was shape. I remember it was the first manager I ever worked under, I don't know if you, Ian, as well. We'd do 11v11 and he would take somebody off and he would play one team 10 against 11. How did you play against it? And I remember my mind was blown because I'd never seen that. A manager doing that. You would go, right, you go off and right, it's 1-0 to the team with 10 men, right? And you've got to break them down and there's 5 minutes left, on you go. And it was a scenario where you had to do it.
He was I wouldn't say a shock appointment, but he was a surprise appointment because nobody knew. Normally you hear something, even an hour before, but we had no clue whatsoever. And I think he definitely raised standards again within the club. I remember the days of boys hanging about the physio's room where all the gossip happens and all the fun happens. They were over. They were put away straight away. Kind of taught you don't want to be in that room. So you're right. He came in with all the young boys. Scott Brown, Kevin Thompson's, Fletcher's, Gary, Deke, all these sort of guys. And he got us going. To be fair, he got us really, really, really going. And you're right. He did sort of revolutionise our mindset in terms of training, because like you say, 4-minute runs, I'd never heard of 4-minute runs in my life at that stage, and then 4-minute runs with a ball. Of course, logic tells you that makes a lot of sense now, but at the time we weren't used to it.
But it shows you how much in the game he's respected, because down south, if he loses a job, there's always another job for him.
Can you remember what he said his first day when he came into Easter Road? He came in his first day, he says...
Remember having a meeting?
He said, with a meeting, and he said, listen, I'm Tony, blah, blah, blah. He says, my ambition's to manage in the Premier League in England. So we were all like that. He's got a big hit for his selling, he's only in the job. And he says, if that's no your ambition in here, then you're no use to me. Yeah. And that always stuck with me. He said that, because I thought it was quite arrogant for him to say that, but it wasn't. Because it was him saying, well, this is where I want to get to.
Did you stick your hand up and say, I want to go to America?
No, I ended up with Dundee. He had me in his office, I think, later that day, saying you're going to Dundee. But Tony was, and I remember, set pieces against, he would, so if it was me and Gary O'Connor playing up front, for example, he would say, listen, when it's a corner against, I want you two to stand in this position. And he would tell the goalkeeper, as soon as you get the ball, bang, you would throw it to one of us. And Hibs were at that season, I started the season and I went to Dundee, but Hibs that season were lethal on the counter-attack. See, every time the pace and the exuberance that teams had, and it was all bang, into Gary O'Connor's feet, turn, play through to Deke.
Yeah. Good players though, as well, good young players, but who were getting better all the time because they were getting games. Hibs' hand was forced a little bit. Financially we weren't in a great position. But very fortunate to have a lot of good young players coming through at that time. But in saying that, as a manager, there's having it and then doing it. There's completely different things, and you had to manage, Derek and Gary in particular, because they were a wee bit different. You had to try and tame Scott Brown, because he started out as a right winger, not a centre midfield. Scott ran about absolutely everywhere. Couldn't really hold his position, but he had so much energy and drive and enthusiasm, so you had to kind of temper that down a little bit, and then get the best out of the rest of us as well.
And he signed David Murphy, left back, and he signed Guylan Bouzelan. Remember Guylan Bouzelan?
Yeah.
He came in, and Boozy sat beside me in the dressing room. He came in in trial, and you're right, Hibs had very little money. That was one of the reasons that I left. I think Grant Brednall, there was a couple of guys that were all punted, but Guylan Bouzelan said to me one day, he signed, and he said to me, he got his wage slip. So the first wage slip he got, he says, Tom, what's this? And it was the bottom line, his thing, he says, is this my tax? And I says, no, Boozy, that's your wage.
Money.
He was on, I can't remember, 3 or 4
player, by the way.
Brilliant player, but that contract got ripped up fairly quickly because he was quality, but Hibs didn't have a lot of money, and that, again, from Bobby to Tony, that's why a lot of young players come through, because they never had the money to go and sign experienced players or big players like that. Obviously, you establish yourself as a top player at Hibs, with a regular captain. Your old gaffer, Alec McLeish, picks up the phone. How did that move come about to Rangers?
Do you know, it came? I'd been injured again for a large part of the season before, and then I came back, and believe it or not, I was playing left wing. Can you believe? Incredible. We went up to Tannadice one night, League Cup game, and we lost 2-1 the next time. We should never have lost that game in a million years, and it hurt me really badly. I remember speaking to my agent that night. He says, "We ain't going to do nothing here. We ain't going to do nothing." It was an emotion at the time, because I didn't really mean it. And he said, "Right, I need to meet you tomorrow for a something to eat or whatever." I said, fine, no, but I had no clue. And he said, "I've got an offer for you from Rangers." Obviously, the big pool was Alec. Andy Watson was there, the assistant manager, who I knew pretty well as also. And I think once that happened, or I was told, it was very difficult for me not to go there. Not just because your career's short, you're going to Rangers, you're going to work for a manager you already worked for, you're going to work for an assistant you already worked for. Ultimately, you're going to go and train with better players, and that's no disrespect to the guys that we had. But the facts are they were. It's simple as that. So it was kind of a no-brainer. A couple of teams, I was coming to the end of my contract as well on the Bosman. A couple of teams came in fairly late on, decent teams, but my heart at that point was set on going to Rangers, because I just thought, what an opportunity.
And Alex signed you. Where did Alec play you at Rangers?
Listen,
I think your best position was either centre back or centre mid, but you could play anywhere across the back.
Yeah, I think I moved about a bit. Left back, centre half, centre mid. I probably enjoyed centre half and centre mid the most. I didn't really enjoy full back, to be honest. Certainly not at the end of my career. When you're stuck out there on your own and your legs are struggling a wee bit, and you're playing against young players, and you're trying to be positionally good, but from being positionally good defensively, you're not going to get forward very often.
Who were you playing at the back with then? What would the back four be?
Well, it was Rangers again were going through that sort of transition. Michael Ball was there, but I think Rangers were running out of money a little bit, and Michael left. So say I was left back, it'd be me, Marvin Andrews, Soto Kiriakos, and Fernando Rickson. We change one or two. Bob Malcolm was there, who could play centre half as well. Ronnie Vaterhouse was a goalkeeper, stroke Stefan Kloss. We were really poor domestically. We weren't a great team with the ball. We were okay in the counter-attack, which is why I think we'd done quite well in Europe with Peter Lovenkrands. We had Thomas Buffel, Nacho Novo, Dado Purzo, so that was our kind of our attacking threats. You had Barry Ferguson, Brahim Hemdani came in the middle as well. Alec Ray was still there. So we had a decent side, but we just never really got it going domestically. In fact, my first Old Firm game, we beat Celtic 3-1, and it was at
Ibrox.
It was at Ibrox.
How did you feel that atmosphere compared? You obviously played the Edinburgh derbies. How did you feel that compared to the Old Firm derby?
It is different. It's definitely more intense. There's no question. I wouldn't say it means any more to Rangers Celtic than it does to Hibs or Hearts, and the Edinburgh derby will always be my derby. But it was different. It was definitely different. The lead up was more like a cup final. I think the Edinburgh derby for me,
the whole build up for the whole week.
Yeah, whole week was different. The Edinburgh derby for me was. It was much more excitement around it in terms of, I can't wait, let's go to Tynecastle at Easter Road, let's go, we'll beat them. And the Rangers Celtic was tense because people were petrified to lose the game rather than win the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, and obviously you played with Barry Ferguson. I played against Barry, he was a top player. His demands on the players in there, did you see that when you first went in there? His demands on the players?
100%.
Captain?
100%, yeah.
Was it sink or swim? You had to...
100% training. There was no introduction, no let off. You could tell straight away when I went in. I went to Rangers. The day I went to Rangers, or the day I started at Rangers, we flew out pre-season to Canada, which was probably the best thing for me because I get to know everybody. But the demands were extremely high, and you don't want to let them down because they'll let you know about it. But Barry was. Everybody knows how good a player Barry was. But Barry was a much better player than people actually think. With the ball, any tight space. Just brilliant. Demanded the ball all the time. Even if he lost the ball 2 or 3 times and he had 2 or 3 men around him, he'd want that ball. Don't give him the ball and he'll let you know about it as well. But his demands were high.
Yeah, I think people realise that when we all played with Hibs, we were a big club, and then you go to the big club like Rangers or Celtic, that is, just as you said there, the demands. I remember my first day at Celtic, we went up along to Barrowfield and Big Billy McNeely picked I think it was about 8-a-side game, with the goals in, and he always made the parts tight, which obviously meant your passing had to be crisper. I remember for 10 minutes they were all rolling about fighting each other. I think physically, because of the competitiveness of just an 8-a-side game, that like Tommy Burns and Pat Bonnerby and the ground knocking lumps at each other because they were behind, or they were losing a game or something. And for me, they carried that on to the weekend. Well, they carried all that competitive on, whereas I'm not saying that Hibs and other teams don't do that either, but it doesn't seem to be the same intensity.
It's a really hard thing to explain to people, but I've seen a few fights at Murray Park as well, purely because of the competitiveness. And it boiled over, and it was all about football. It wasn't about anything personal, it was football related. But to explain it, it's very, very difficult. But there is definitely 100% a different intensity and a different pressure. It's just the way it is.
Obviously, Barry's in at Rangers at the minute. Can you see him getting the job long term?
Well, he's certainly not. Off to a bad start. Going to Parkhead and getting that win, knocking Fenerbahce out in Europe as well. People were, shocked. When Barry got the job, and people had a lot to say about it. I'm sure Barry didn't care, and certainly when you get a job and after all that noise is finished, you get down to work, and he's certainly got off to a fantastic start. And it shows you, I think, that Number one, I think people forget it's really good for Scottish managers and coaches because we're getting forgotten about a little bit, and we don't like to really say, oh, he's done a really good job. And people like to go, oh, it's Barry Ferguson, who played for Rangers. So Hibs and Hearts fans and Celtic fans, Aberdeen fans, whoever it is, don't want to give him any credit. But sometimes you have to look at the cold light of day. He's taken a team that was getting a lot of slagging off in the press. People were, calling for the board's head, everybody's head, the players' heads are not good enough. And then they go and produce performances like they have under Barry. But now the biggest thing for him is keeping it going. How far can he take them? Beating Celtic a couple of weeks ago was brilliant for him. It's not going to affect anything. The league's gone. Celtic are too far ahead. But if you can get him to a final or thereabouts, and his stock's going to be high, really, really high. And if Rangers don't want him, someone else definitely will.
If he carries the way he was on the park, the way he behaved on the park, and the inspiration, if he takes that into that Rangers dressing room, a lot of these guys are going to have to take a step back and say, look, this guy, okay, you might say his CV isn't there as a manager, but certainly his enthusiasm and everything about the club is enough for me to give him it. Because he's not going to stroll about that dressing room suffering fools gladly, because he never did it on the park. And if he carries that hunger, I'm sure he's got a great chance.
That's it. I don't think any player will get away with much on the training ground or in games. If you're not working hard, number one, and doing what you want the manager to do, he won't play you. And that's half the battle. Having players that are going out that tunnel every game, I'm not going to say they're going to play brilliant every week, I'm not going to say they're going to be the best player on the pitch, but they're going to give you absolutely everything. See if they're giving you everything every week, you've got a chance, certainly.
No, I totally agree with you, Ian. I think that with Barry, obviously we know him as a person. As a manager, he was getting questioned because of his previous experiences at different clubs, but I think it was a masterstroke from Rangers to get him in, to bring Neil McCann and Billy Dodds and Griggs in. It's united the whole club. It's united the fan base, because there was a lot of fractures between the supporters and the board and the team. And I think it's people will say, oh, we should go and get a foreign manager and he's not got the experience, but he showed against Jose Mourinho over 2 legs. Jose Mourinho's one of the greatest managers that the football's ever seen, and he done him over 2 legs. And he goes to Brendan Rodgers as a top manager, and he goes there at 2 each. Easy to take a striker off and put one on. He puts 2 strikers on, which I was sitting watching the game going, that's quite a lot of managers wouldn't do that, wouldn't go 2 up front. He kept him on and put Igamani on beside Dessers, and they got rewarded for it. So I think he's shown that he's more than just somebody that's going to go in and go, right, we're Rangers, and batter people about, and he's got a wee bit of tactical acumen as well.
Yeah, people will always look at CVs and, Alloa, Clyde, Kelty. You've got to remember circumstances dictate sometimes as well what you can achieve. They're hard jobs. Kelty wasn't hard, but
Did you find that when you went down? Obviously, you started at the back. Did you deal with that quality of player? Did you feel that was more difficult? I know Barry's obviously done that the same.
I mean, I was actually pleasantly surprised how good the players were, because we were Championship at the time.
That's right.
But our game was based on hard work, though. I'm not going to say we were pretty on the eye, because we weren't, but we were in a position at the bottom of the league by quite a distance where we had to get results quickly. So what did we do? I wouldn't say at that time the league was one that you could go and play a lot of football in. You had to go a bit longer, you had to be a bit more aggressive, and we had guys that could do it, simple as that. With guys, again, it goes back to roughly, with guys who, when they went out in the tunnel, they were going to give you everything. And the reason they were going to give you everything, because they could see you were going to give everything, and you were trying to help them. And we went on an incredible run and managed to stay up. And then we tried to build and build and build, but then eventually what normally happens with these clubs is
take them as far as you can, kind of thing.
Pretty much, and then the cards fall down, and that's it gone.
We're talking about Rangers managers. I'll just quickly go back to Paul Le Guen, who came in when you were at Rangers. When he walked in the door with that reputation as being one of the top coaches in Europe with Lyon, did you sense straight away that it wasn't going to work out for him at Rangers, or did you expect him to do better at Rangers?
Yeah, I think there's again circumstances. He was pretty strict in his approach, which I had no problem with, but he was also quite laid back in his own way.
True about the diet stuff and all that.
Yeah, it wasn't
canteen and stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't quite to the extreme levels that people like to say, but he certainly did change that. He changed quite a lot of things in terms of what we were doing, and I wouldn't say a lot of players. A few players didn't like it because that's not what they were used to, and it was a core, our core team. There's no, I mean, it's well known, Barry and Paul didn't get on. But again, it goes back to Barry's characteristics compared to Paul. After the game, for example, Paul would never shouted. Never shouted.
Win, lose or draw, nothing.
Win, lose or draw, he would just come and say, "Okay, boys, we'll see you Monday, we'll talk Monday." That was not what Barry wanted. Barry was like, "This is Rangers, for God's sake, we're getting beat off in Inverness. We're drawing the Livingston. This is unacceptable." So I think Paul came to Rangers at the wrong time, in hindsight. Of course, it was a wonderful appointment. Again, a wonderful appointment on paper. A foreign manager on paper, but it didn't work out.
I think Scottish football's a unique league. I think when foreign managers come in, foreign players come in, I've always found watching it, playing in the Scottish League and watching the Scottish League, I think there's a couple of things you need to have as a player. You need to be fit and you need to be robust. You need to get about the pitch, you need to win second balls. And as a manager, I think you need to realise that at times as well. And that's why, listen, Celtic and Rangers have had some great foreign managers. But when I look at the clubs outside the Celtic and Rangers over the last 10, 20 years who have appointed foreign managers, I don't think a lot of them have been successful.
It's not been.
And I don't think, off the top of my head, I don't think there's anyone in terms of foreign. I don't mean English. I'm talking about from guys abroad who come in and struggle in this league.
I think is away from managers. I think a lot of foreign players get away with murder. Because if you're a Scottish guy going to Rangers or Celtic, you've got to perform.
Yeah.
You've got to perform, and just say the boy Kuhn at Celtic, it'll take a year to settle. It'll take 6 months for them to get into the system and that. You don't get away with that if you're a Scottish player.
No,
You've got to go in there. You know as soon as you walk through that door at Rangers or Celtic, you know the demands that are there. I don't think a lot of the foreign players that come here know exactly until they get here.
And I also think, Ruffy, that when you go from, say, Hibs or Hearts or Aberdeen to Rangers or Celtic, you're judged harsh. Because why are we signing players from Hibs, Hearts, Aberdeen?
A fancy name from a fancy club.
Fancy name. It's all about names and where you've came from. If you played for Sporting Lisbon B team and you got a fancy name, they go, "Oh yeah, this guy's brilliant, 21-year-old, he's going to be amazing." Oh, the guy from Aberdeen's no good though. There's no logic in it.
Going to your managerial career, obviously you went back to Hibs. Mixu, Yogi, Colin Calderwood, Pat Fenlon, played under a lot of managers there. Coming to the tail end of your career, when did you start to think about coaching, becoming a manager?
I didn't. What happened was
I played with you, and I thought you were pretty quiet as a player.
Yeah.
I didn't think you were vocal. That doesn't mean I didn't think you would be a manager, but I didn't really see that.
I didn't think
early in your career.
I didn't think. I always thought I'd get a chance to be a manager, somewhere at some point, and I wanted to be, but I didn't know how to do it. Like, it wasn't something I worked on when I was a young player, and you get young players now who are doing all their badges early. I kind of waited towards the end, and I was in America doing a wee bit coaching, and I applied for the Dumbarton job just to see where I was in terms of everything, and I thought, well, I don't really think I'll get that. I don't particularly really want it right now, but I want to see where I am. And then I get offered the job and I'm thrown in. And I remember I was 31. I remember thinking when I signed the contract, sitting in the office at Dumbarton that night, thinking, right, what do I do? I've never wrote set plays up in my life. I've never had training. I've never spoken in front of a group of 20 guys in my life.
Did you find that the hardest part? The speaking in front of people in the training?
Yeah, at the start. Especially about football, because when you've played at probably a wee bit higher level than these guys, they're expecting you to be on it every time. So it took a bit of time to adjust to that. But once you do it, it becomes, it's like anything, it becomes easier and easier and easier. But certainly at the start, I mean, I've seen guys on coaching courses, good players, big names, and can talk, and then the minute they're up there,
I was the same.
Pieces.
I was the same.
Horrible feeling.
Done the A licence through and done it with Scott Brown and me and Bruni, and we banter and talk away and all that, and then right, Tam, you're on.
Aye. Oh.
It's like the colour just drains from your face. You don't know what you're doing. You're getting out bibs, wrong colour.
You always know on a coaching course who's the next guy on, because he's away walking down the woods and you see him rubbing his head and he's looking at his notepad and he's counting bibs out. 8 bibs, 1, 2.
My biggest fear would be the formation. Walking in front of 16 guys, right? We're going to play a 4-4-5 today, and get the numbers all right.
Honestly,
getting 12 players or something like that.
I remember my first game at Dumbarton. I wrote the set plays up at night. I went to bed and I woke up during the night and I ran downstairs to check if I've made a mistake. I've made too many men on the pitch or whatever it is. But it was fine. But again, you just learn as you go.
You done fantastically well at Dumbarton, and you earned a crack at a big club in St Mirren.
Yeah.
Didn't quite work out for you there. You obviously have the reasons for that. Did you feel you were ready for a club that size at that point?
Yeah, I did. I think I'd taken Dumbarton as far as I could, and I felt they needed refreshed. We were really unlucky not to get in the playoffs that season. St Mirren came about, which was a brilliant club. It was just the wrong time. I went into, again...
Championship at that point?
He'd just been relegated.
Right.
Tommy Craig had been the manager who got sacked. He had Jim Goodwin and Gary Teal as assistants. So Tommy got sacked, and then Gary Teal became the manager, and Jim Goodwin was back in the change room. So I had to deal with that dynamic. I walked into John McGinn getting the spike in his leg from Tomo, all that stuff. A club that they were trying to sell the club as well. The budget wasn't high. The budget was really, really low. We couldn't sign any players. But the results weren't good enough as well. We have to appreciate that as well. But it was a really, really tough time.
Do I remember, maybe it was me, do you remember you having a confrontation with the supporters?
Yes.
From the stand?
Yeah.
The next question is, do you think supporters are getting too big for their boots? Not them all. A minority.
No, I don't think. I think I was a young manager at that point. I look back and I see a lot of young managers at the moment, particularly, and I just think, oh God, that was a bit like me back in the day. And you learn, and you think, oh, that was right. What I said was wrong. I don't think supporters get too big for their boots. But some supporters, like, if they don't know what it is, they make it up. Somebody's injured, and that grows arms and legs, and it does nobody any good whatsoever. Or they'll say something about someone, but I don't think they're getting too big for their boots. I think a lot of supporters do know what they're talking about, and they've been watching football a long, long time now. But my relationship with the St Mirren supporters wasn't there. It wasn't there from day one, really. I don't think they had a huge. They didn't really want to do it, and I wasn't really that bothered either at that point, because I was too busy dealing with a lot of stuff behind the scenes, trying to keep, trying to get a club, who thought they should be top of the league. With Rangers and Hibs, in the Championship, it was really, really hard to ask, but we just didn't perform. That's the bottom line, but there was reasons behind it.
You obviously went away and kind of took a wee break away for the game and come back with Airdrie. Had a really good spell at Airdrie, and unlucky a couple of times in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Not to go up. Did you enjoy it? Did that give you your love back for the game? Obviously disappointing.
Yeah, it did. I went over to Norway for a couple of years with assistant Kevin Nichol, assistant, and that gave me a wee bit of time to breathe, a wee bit of time to learn and watch Kevin, because Kevin's really, really good at what he does, really good. And I got to that crossroads. What am I going to do? Because I was going to do a third year, and then the Airdrie job came about, and I was very, very fortunate that I went into a club where the owners were so understanding of what was needed. I went in, I think they were fifth in League One. I said to the owner at the time, we can't get in the playoffs. Oh, we can, but it'll end until we could get a real hide-in, because we're not ready. We need to structure something, and that was what they were good at. Paul and Scott were brilliant to me. Probably the best run club I've managed. I say probably it was, because it ran like military clockwork. It was great. I learnt so much from the board, and they let me get on with the job. They just let me get on with the job.
And obviously we spoke about Wraith Rovers at the start of the show. Let's a couple of things before we could sit here and talk for hours. A couple of things before we finish. Best player you played with?
Tam McManus.
That's a lie.
Couldn't have been playing with him. He's sitting on the bench. He's sitting on the bench most of the time.
Nobody's ever said that. I'll take that, Ruffy.
I take it, aye.
The best player, I'll keep it to Hibs, because you play with international players. You play at Rangers, you played down at Norwich and Hibs. So I'll keep it to Hibs. And I'm going to obviously go with Frank and Russell, because I think it's so hard to separate them, even though they're completely different players. But those two guys were just different level player. Don't get me wrong, I could never do the things they do.
It's mind blowing to think that they played in the Championship.
Crazy. No wonder we won it by 30 odd points. It was ridiculous.
And best player you played against?
Best player I played against so in a 1v1 battle, who I found really hard to play against, was Arthur Newman. He played right wing back. I played left wing back, but I remember a game at Easter.
He was a Rolls Royce. I played against him a few times as well.
What a player! I remember my first time I played against Arthur Newman. I didn't know him, and he was talking me through the game, just talking me. He was getting the better of me, as he would. Playing for Holland and stuff at the time, and he was saying, keep going, son, you're doing great, and probably 4-0 Rangers at the time.
No, listen, Ian, it's been fantastic to have you in. I hope you're back in the game. I think your CV certainly indicates that you should be back in the game, and I hope that comes about shortly. Listen, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. Thanks for listening and thanks for watching.